It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason. I cannot believe that we are able to officially wake up today. We are able to survive today. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but you're waking up, or maybe you're just getting off work if you work third shift, in which you do. I feel very, very bad for you because I understand the third shift job, and it's not the most enjoyable at all. But whether you're starting your day or you're ending your day, you're doing it, and the government is shut down. I don't know how we're surviving right now. I don't know how we're able to wake up. I don't know how we're able to even consume any food for breakfast to start off your day. I'm not sure how the survival of you and I right now at this very moment is actually existing and happening because of the fact that the government is actually not operating at its fullest power. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Happy Monday morning. That's right. We do this every single week. It's time to get you pumped up for the day, even without the government's help, to get you up and going in the morning. Good morning, government. What can I do for you today?
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
There it is. I want to hear from you today. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. Whatever's on your mind. Broadcasting from Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker KQAM, and broadcasting all across the entire state of Kansas and beyond on the Mid-America Network, along with the TV. We are officially 1 week into the TV broadcast on KGPT channel 2610. Welcome aboard for you guys as well if you're tuning in, starting off your day. However you may be doing it, we love having you here, even with the government not helping us get out of bed this morning, not helping us wake up, not helping us in any way, shape, or form. I know it's a very scary ordeal. It's very scary. Even though the government shuts down at 5 o'clock Eastern time every day, even though the government shuts down every weekend, or the government shuts down on every holiday, it does not matter. The fact that they're not there to wake you up this morning is a very, very scary ordeal for some. I get it. I totally understand. We will talk about the government shutdown here and get your thoughts on it. Also, all the marches that happened over the weekend. I'm not sure if you paid attention to any of them, good and bad marches. And actually, the funny thing is we're actually going to be talking to one of the march organizers coming up in a couple days. So get ready for that. That'll be entertaining as well. At the bottom of the hour, we'll play an interview that we had with Dave Traubert with the Kansas Policy Institute on Friday. I had to compile it and condense it because we talked to him for about 45 minutes on Friday. And we'll play part of that interview for you at the bottom of this hour for the western part of the state. The government shutdown. They're voting on a bill as of noon today. They're going to be planning on it. They were negotiating and haggling and trying to compromise as of yesterday. Whether it's actually going to do any good or not, I don't know. But it sounds like they may try to address DACA. Now, how they address DACA is going to be a very interesting conversation. I don't know what they mean by addressing DACA. The bad part about how this moves fast and why we were so critical of things back during the Barack Obama times was because of the fact that they did the quote-unquote Fast and Furious. The American people, you and I, were not familiar in knowing what actually was detailed into the bills that they were proposing, debating, and voting on. And that is one negative that we see right now because they want to open up right now, very fast, very quick. We need to open it back up. It's a terrible ordeal. The government's not working. It's shut down. It's a travesty to the American people, which it's not. As you can see, you're still waking up today. As you can see, you're still going to go to work today. You're still going to be productive in society today. You're going to make a paycheck today, or at least contribute to your paycheck when you get it in another week or two, whenever you get paid. That's what we're here to do on a daily basis. All of that can be done without the government's help. but they're a little panicky. I did like the fact that President Donald Trump tried to use the military in this. Now, the military will be fine. The military will be paid. Some of the members of the military may be furloughed, but which means they'll go to work, and then once the government does reopen, then they will get paid. I'm not concerned about it. It's going to be okay. I do have to give credit to some of the legislators here in Kansas that have stalled their paychecks. Is it really the biggest deal in the world? No. But it's the sentiment that counts. It's the message that actually matters, and the message that actually counts. Tomorrow, we will be talking with Congressman Ron Estes here from the 4th Congressional seat on the government shutdown, and he was one of them that said, yeah, you know what, keep my paycheck until we reopen again. Along with Congressman Kevin Yoder, along with Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins, all three of them that I have heard, maybe more, but at least those three were ones that sent a letter and said, yeah, you know what, we understand that we're going to get our paycheck still. I don't want it. Go ahead and freeze mine until we open up our government again. It's not going to be the breaking end all deal, but you know what? It's the sentiment that actually counts, and I applaud them very much. So thank you for doing that. To me, that's really important. To me, it's the little things like that that actually matter, because that means you are somewhat in tune with what the American people are actually concerned about. How many people, show of hands, said, wait a second, the military's not going to get paid, but congressmen and women are, and they're the ones not doing their job? Come on. Yeah, I understand that. So I do congratulate them and thank them for doing what they did. It doesn't make or break the deal? No, it doesn't. What kind of deal do you think they're going to come along with DACA? And that's what we're concerned about. Here's according to Politico. Shortly after 9 p.m. yesterday, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced that the chamber would vote on a plan at noon today to fund the government through February 8th. So it's only really a 2-week plan. In attempted concessions to Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, McConnell said he would take up legislation to protect some young immigrants from deportation if a deal to address their status is not reached by the time funding expires in early February. So he set the deal, which makes me very concerned, coming from someone like Mitch McConnell, saying we have until February 8th. During that 2-week time of the extended budget, we need to address immigration. That's when we're going to do. So we're really, I don't know. I'm curious if we're biting off more than we can chew, which is why I'm okay with letting the government shut down a little bit longer. Are we biting off more than we can chew? And that's what I want to hear from you on this morning. It's 316-721-8255. We're really, from what Mitch McConnell had said, this is coming from the guy, by the way, that said that we had a very, very successful 2017 because we nominated a Supreme Court justice and we passed a tax cut. 2 things in a 365-day year. Now, those things were substantial. Don't get me wrong, they were still great things, but was that the end all? Hey, this was a fantastic, wonderful year. We couldn't get any better like that. That was a heck of a year, baby. This is the individual that said 2 items was a successful year. Now we're saying that pretty much we need to do our immigration reform bill. We're going to pass our immigration bill during a 2-week span. How many months did it take us to do the tax cuts? Really, 2-3 months almost? And we're going to say that we're going to do immigration reform in order to decide what we're going to do with DACA recipients within 2 weeks, or we will vote on a bill to allow them to stay. That's the addendum that he set. That is the end goal that he had set for them, which means, guess what? He has set the Republicans up to fail. Either we will do immigration reform, we will get enough Republicans and some Democrats to go along with us to not support the DACA recipients amnesty, that we will actually do a conservative Republican plan to build the wall, to enforce immigration, to start allowing DACA recipients to go back to wherever their family had come from, or start going through the process to make it right and legit. And either you go along with all of this as every Republican, which you already know is not going to happen. Thank you, Lindsey Graham. Thank you, John McCain. Thank you, some other moderate Republicans. That either you go along with this bill, or at the end of this, in our 2 weeks, when the budget runs out again, we could potentially shut down the government again, and then it will be Republicans' fault because we didn't get the thing done that we wanted to, and then we'll vote for amnesty on DACA. That's what he just set us up for. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what this may lead to. I'm concerned that this is setting us up to fail, and then he's going to say, well, we're going to keep our end of the bargain, and we didn't come to a deal. We didn't come to a conclusion, so therefore, now we're going to have to vote for amnesty on DACA. We're going to have to keep some of these individuals in here just to appease some Democrats because we promised them. It doesn't matter that they turn their back on conservatives. It doesn't matter that they turn their back on President Trump being the head of the Republican Party right now, being the president of the United States. It doesn't matter that the individuals that got President Trump into office and that are all fired up about, wait a second, we're tired of being second-class citizens. It doesn't matter that we have angry American citizens that actually want something to be done and immigration to be enforced, and we want legitimacy in our immigration process. It doesn't matter about any of that. That he's going to say we have 2 weeks to come up with our entire immigration reform on what we're going to do, and if we do not do it by then we will vote on amnesty for DACA. Because that's the deal that Mitch McConnell just gave Chuck Schumer. The Democrats right now have more power as the slim minority than the actual majority party does as the Republicans. I've been seeing all the social media comments all over the weekend about how the Democrats are criticizing Republicans. You can't blame us because you have the majority in the House and in the Senate and the presidency, which they obviously don't understand how many votes this actually takes in order to do that. They did vote, and we did get a majority. 50-49 was the vote when we tried to vote. It didn't work because we have to have 60 votes in the Senate. We're not going to get 60 votes in the Senate unless we have some Democrat support. So them criticizing the Republicans for being obstructionists before, they are now the obstructionists. While they're trying to blame Republicans for not getting anything done, they hold all the whole power right now. And how we go about that from there, that's going to decide on what the Republicans end up doing. Got some calls on the line. Stay here. Lots to get to. Happy Monday morning. This is the Voice of Reason.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network along with KGPT TV. Appreciate you hanging out with us today on a Monday, a government shutdown Monday. I know it's a very scary thing. It's a very scary, horrible thing, but yet somehow we're surviving and making it through. Welcome in, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Here's the deal. Their proposal that they have that they're going to be voting on at noon today would reopen the government through February 8th and have McConnell commit on the Senate floor to holding an immigration vote before that date. Now, McConnell said that if they do not pass something from that immigration vote before that date, then that would consist of potentially giving amnesty to the DACA recipients afterwards. Whether that actually happens or not, then we shall see. Now, the press secretary from President Trump, the deputy press secretary, said as long as Senator Graham, meaning Lindsey Graham, who has been one of the big advocates for the DACA amnesty, as long as Senator Graham chooses to support legislation that sides with people in this country illegally and unlawfully instead of our own American citizens, we're going nowhere. He's been an outlier for years. So that's where we're at. We potentially could see a presidential veto, which would even make me happier, and then we could see more of a government shutdown, which I know is a very scary thing sometimes. It's a terrible ordeal. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, happy Free from the Feds Monday.
Good morning, Myron. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Congress isn't really meeting.
That's right. They're having a hard time actually, working and doing anything, and they're officially shut down. So it's a very scary day for some individuals.
Yeah, what pleases me is all the times in the past when, as a minority party, the Republicans wouldn't garner enough votes to pass what the Democrats wanted. So this time, being in the majority, we get to use the tactics of the majority Democrats against them now.
Sure.
As in, this time we get everything we want, and you wait to get what you want. And after after the budget bills are passed, after all the things that the Congress is supposed to be doing are done, then we bring up a law to change the status. However, I'm not really concerned about the DACAs, because a classic example recently, there was a video where a man was being deported.
Yes.
After 40 years in the U.S., he was brought here when he was 10.
Sure.
Well, if you give him 10 years to get through schooling, at age 20, he assumedly went to work. He worked in the U.S. illegally.
Sure.
For 20 years.
Yep.
He had a wife and children that were U.S. citizens. From what immigration attorneys tell me, you marry an American, you're looking at 3 to 5 years and $5,000 to $10,000 to be legal. And that's after marrying a U.S. citizen.
Sure.
So in 20 years' time, he couldn't start the application, couldn't get a good attorney, couldn't get himself legal. How did he support his family for 20 years? Not
legally.
Question.
It's a good question.
If you're not here, it's not that difficult to get citizenship. It's expensive. It's time-consuming.
And that's why
it's not that tough.
It's not that tough. And it's a great point, Myron. And that's why I'm so upset about this idea of giving amnesty to these individuals, because of the fact that they have had the opportunity to do so. They've been here for 20, 30, 40 years. As you mentioned, they came here as kids, not their fault. But now they know they're adults. They know the law. They know the discussion. They know what's going on. They know that they're still in somewhat hiding, because if they get found as an illegal immigrant, they would get in trouble. They know the situation, yet they've done nothing to fix the situation. It's on them. And if they continue to live their lives in illegally as a criminal, so to speak, because they've broken the law and they know they've broken the law and yet have not fixed it, or maybe they tried it and they have not succeeded yet, then try again. I have very, very little sympathy for individuals like that who do not take the responsibility, especially if you have a family. You know, if you're in trouble, or you potentially could be in trouble, and that you have a family, that you would want to make sure that you're not going to be torn away from your family, and that you would do whatever that takes, even if it is your own accord, leaving them for a little bit in order to make sure you do the proper process, and then that way you're not getting in trouble, and it's going to be away from your family even longer. I have a very hard time with that sympathy. Let's go back to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Hey, Scott. How are you, sir?
I got some breaking news here.
Breaking news, okay.
Yeah, because if the cop who shot that guy, the supervisor on the scene had binoculars, he saw that the guy had no gun, and that guy was going against orders. He just shot this spontaneously or whatever.
The cold-hearted killer, right?
Yeah, exactly, because his supervisor saw it through his binoculars. He saw that the guy had no gun. And yet this guy shot without being ordered to shoot, because they had a supervisor on the scene.
Well, there we go. The breaking news, Scott. I appreciate it. Bottom of the hour news coming up here. Not really on topic, but okay. I appreciate the breaking news sentiment there. We may discuss that at a later time. The cold-hearted killer, the purpose of the police wanting to go out of their way to harm intentionally, to try and kill all citizens. Yeah. Appreciate the call, Scott. Bottom of the hour news coming up here. Your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
Never shies away from a fight.
Just you try it.
Oh, I'll try it.
Just you try it.
You'll feel it when I try it.
I'd like to see you have at it.
Would you now?
And now's your chance to jump in the ring.
Are you insane?
Give Andy a call at 316-721-8255. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason all across the entire state of Kansas, the Mid-America region, and beyond. Welcome into it. Appreciate you hanging out today on a Monday. It's a government shutdown Monday. Terrible ordeal there. All right, I want to shift gears just for a second. We'll get back to the government shutdown and, yes, even the potential shootings from the law enforcement if we choose to do so a little bit later. I do want to play an interview. We interviewed him on Friday on the program in the 8 o'clock hour. I want to play it for the Western states, and we're right in the heat of legislative session. I do not want to miss the opportunity for us to understand what's really happening right now in our legislative session. Budgetary-wise, financially-wise, tax-wise, how do we actually make this efficient for you and I, the taxpayer? We sat down with Dave Traubert with the Kansas Policy Institute. Now, remember, they're nonpartisan. They don't look at politics. They don't look at the political side of it. They don't look at the bickering between the two parties. They just give you strictly the numbers. And then we come to our conclusion. That's what they do. That's what they're all about, and that's what we support here on The Voice of Reason. So here's Dave Traubert. We spoke with him on Friday right here on The Voice of Reason. The state budget's the same way. We're talking about tiny things between increased highway projects, which we have almost $1 billion we spend a year on maintenance of highways, and we're still number 3 in the country on quality, but at the same time, they want more projects done, which is fine. They want the corrections officers with more salary increases there. We just heard the judicial branch, and they want more salary increases for their employees, and it's just the tiny things along the way, along with the massive stuff. We have to understand where they want the money to go and where they're going to find all this money, Dave.
Well, there's, one of my favorite economists said, Thomas Sowell said, the first rule of economics is scarcity.
Sure.
There's only so much of something to go around. And the first rule of politics is to avoid the first rule of economics. There's, everybody, it's easy to say we need to, and we do, and these are serious problems. We do need to have fairly compensated correction workers. We do need to have good highways and so forth, and we certainly have to have schools be adequately funded.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that you spend whatever someone wants. And there may be a case, correction workers. I mean, a good case can be made that a lot of the correction workers are underpaid. But raising someone's tax just to do that is not the only option. And when you elect an option of, well, then we'll tax somebody else to do this, all you've done is create another problem.
Sure.
Instead of, rather than looking at any kind of a tax increase, as long as government is not operating at peak efficiency, then you need to find ways to fund new service or enhanced service funding by making better use of the money that's already out there. And that is just one of the hardest things to do in politics because, politicians love to hand out candy and they don't like saying no.
We are officially 2 weeks into the session, and a few bills have been proposed here and there, and not a whole lot of big things have been coming out yet. I know the committees are still working on, like the constitutional amendment for the Supreme Court or for education funding or whatever comes out of this and what's going to come out of it in the end. But as of right now, here's my theory, and I talked about this last hour. My theory is that when it comes to the spending at the state level, that they're going to find a way by justifying the fact that we've seen 2 or 3 months of really good tax revenue coming in because the economy's starting to tick up. They increased the taxes before, and the Republicans have voted for it the last time and overrode the governor's veto the last time, said that they did it so that way it would correct the budget from here on out and we wouldn't have to again, that was it, that was the only tax increase we'd have to worry about. Now we're seeing projections higher, or we're seeing revenue come in higher than projections. The economy's starting to come up. It's going to continue for a while now that the Trump tax cuts have come into play. I see them justifying spending increases this year without raising taxes, saying that the projections show that we'll be fine, get through the elections in November, and by the legislative session of 2019, wrapping up the 2-year budget, we're going to be back into a $2 billion budget deficit, depending on what all they do this year. And then they're going to say, well, we thought the economy was going to do better. It didn't. Now we have to do tax increases. But, oh, by the way, we're going to do it after the election, so that way you can't come after us.
No, in other words, it's like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, it's like deja vu, just what they did last time.
Yeah, this is this is the way the game gets played. I mean, think back to the debates in 2013 and 14 and 15 and 16 when Democrats and a lot of moderate Republicans were saying, well, our budget isn't structurally balanced. It's wrong to do things like highway transfers and not fully fund capers. We need to raise taxes. Where were the tax increase proposals? They weren't there because then they go on record as supporting something that citizens clearly don't want.
Sure.
Because you can make government operate more efficiently and more effectively. So we're going through that same dance now. It's true that revenues are coming in a little bit ahead of expectation. It's also true that they don't talk about, and media doesn't mention, that while there is money in the bank, there isn't anywhere close to the amount of money that's supposed to be in the bank. We're supposed to end with a 7.5% ending balance by law. And most years, whether it was because of in recent years or the last 20, 30 years, most years, quite often, legislators change that law to say basically, well, except this year. And we're still several $100 million short of the amount of money we're supposed to have in the bank. Now, in addition to that, the next budget cycle, the 2019 and 2020 budget cycle, is already about $500 million short. So spend nothing more between now and then, and you're already $500 million short.
Sure.
There is a tax increase coming. They all know it, there's a tax increase coming unless they reduce the cost of government. And we're at the same stalemate. No one wants to propose cost reductions, and no one wants a tax increase on their record. So we deal with the rhetoric of, maybe we can do this, maybe we can phase it in. They never stop to look at, do we really need to do this? I mean, the court is saying you need to spend more money because the school attorneys are saying you need to spend more money. But if you look at, do schools really need it? There's lots of other ways they could get at the money they want if they would operate more efficiently and use their own cash reserves. And then the bigger picture is, if you give them all that money, will it make any difference to students? Well, of course not.
Well, of course not. No.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
Of course not. And as you've mentioned before, and the statements you guys have come out with, no matter how much money you throw at it, it's not going to fix it. We're sitting with $2 billion at a record for operational cash reserves for the schools right now. Districts have been seeing decreases in enrollment while increases in administrators. And even with the less students and more paper pushers, we're still not seeing higher graduation rates or better test scores. So the money's not going to solve any of the problem. But the question is, will they actually realize that in this session, or will they continue to advocate for it because of their own personal agenda?
Well, fortunately, there is a growing chorus of voices in the House and Senate of legislators who are saying enough's enough. We need to start focusing on what matters. We need to focus on improving student achievement. We need to focus on citizens. These solutions have to work for everyone. If all you do is raise taxes or raise spending, knowing you're going to eventually raise taxes, you're only shifting problems, and you're not really solving anything. You're just meeting short-term demands.
Sure.
And so there are people who are standing up and starting to say, let's start looking at different ideas, and maybe we really don't have to just roll over and do what the court says, because, ironically, the court itself went on record in a previous case, Solomon versus State of Kansas, and said when there is a separation of powers, there is actually a duty to resist, not to comply, but to resist.
How do we shake them, grab them by the lapel pin, shake them and say, what the heck are you doing? We can't afford this, and don't you dare raise my taxes again. What do we do?
Well, we start by doing what you just did, Andy. You start telling the truth. You start informing people that this is what's on the horizon if nothing else changes. People need to be informed, and thank goodness that you and your show are doing that, and we really appreciate that. The more that citizens understand the facts, the more likely they are to stand up and say, let's look at something else. Could we maybe find a way? So, for example, it's true that I think a lot of people would agree teachers generally are underpaid in Kansas.
Sure.
And so we need to fix that. And certainly, all the research says getting an effective teacher in front of students will make more difference than anything else. So that seems like that should be a high, if not number one priority. Well, it doesn't take more money to do that. It takes better use of what we're trying to do. Just for example, one of the things we pointed out that over the last 9 years, school districts chose to increase the average pay of principals and superintendents by 11 and 12%. Average pay for teachers went up 5%.
Mm-hmm. But all the argument you ever hear about is saying that the teachers are being not compensated enough and that we've had to cut their salaries or that they haven't gotten salary increases because we don't have enough money.
That's the rhetoric. But there is money to spend on other things. And you think about, because these local school boards make all these decisions. And they don't have easy decisions to make, but they still decide whether it makes more sense to spend money on raising administrator pay than it does raising teacher pay, or compensating teachers for effectiveness. Hiring more non-teachers are hiring them at a much faster pace than hiring teachers. Mm-hmm. Keeping cash in the bank. They started, we're operating cash reserves. Started this last school year, $928 million.
There it is, Dave Traubert, Kansas Policy Institute. Lots of information there. We'll touch on some of that when we come back. Happy Monday to you. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Wrapping up hour number one already. It goes by way too fast. We appreciate Dave Traubert with the Kansas Policy Institute. We chatted with him on Friday. Had to play part of that for you today for the western part of the state, getting the information out the best way that we know how to do. Coming up in hour number three, Dave Traubert, we just talked with JR Claeys, State Representative from Salina area, is going to be joining us on the legislative session. I wonder... And maybe we need this year in our legislative session as well. Think about this for a second. Right now, we're in a government shutdown that everybody's panicking about. Day number 3 of government shutdown. It's the third day, and whatever will we do with the government shutdown? 2 of those days over the weekend. One of them now, which means all hell's going to break loose, and the frogs will be falling from the sky, and it's just going to be a terrible ordeal. What if the state government finally just shut down? We just stopped operating at the state level. It has happened before, by the way. What if we just shut down? We're just, you know what? Yeah. We can't figure out this funding for education. We can't agree on a constitutional amendment. We can't do what really needs to be done. We can't raise taxes. We're not going to raise taxes. It's an election year. How dare that we talk about raising taxes? We're just going to wait till the year after the election, and then we can raise taxes all we want to, because then people will forget about it by the time the next election comes around. Remember that. That's exactly what they're trying to do. Can we shut the state government down until we actually come to this agreement and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to sign checks. We're not going to fund this. We're not going to fund that. We're just going to shut down the state government. It has happened before. It's happened numerous times since over the past, 10, 15 years. 1991, Maine shut down for 17 days. Connecticut shut down for 54 days in 1991. Pennsylvania shut down for 34 days in 1991. And that was really the big year for it. Up to 2002, Tennessee shut down for 3 days. Minnesota shut down for 9. Puerto Rico shut down for 13 days In 2006. In 2007, Michigan shut down for a day. Pennsylvania shut down for another day. Michigan shut down for another day on October 1st. In 2009. 2011, Minnesota shut down for another 20 days. 2015, Illinois shut down for 6 days. Last year, 2017, New Jersey and Maine both shut down for a few days at a time. It has happened before. And I'm wondering, under the situation that we're in right now at the federal level, with the government shutting down, with the bickering between DACA and between funding, and the bad part is that the funding is actually still bigger than what we funded things before because they still want to increase the spending, which is not a good deal. And I guess while we have it shut down, why not expose that fact as well? We need to start doing the budget reform, which they don't want to touch on. Why? Because we're distracted with ridiculous the ideas of giving amnesty to illegal aliens. That's the priorities our government has set for us. Is the fact that right now, under the budget, we just talked about the state budget and where the money's going and how much taxes they want to increase on us. We've just talked about that. Now we're looking at the federal level and looking at a federal tax reform, a federal budget reform on what we can do to get our budget under control. And instead of worrying about where the money's going and what our tax rate's going to look like and what our spending's going to look like, we're too concerned with giving amnesty to illegal aliens. Notice the priority of the progressives. Notice the priority of the Democrats. That's what they'd prefer to argue about, bickering about giving amnesty to individuals that have broken the law for years on end and have done nothing to reconcile that situation, instead of saying, look, we have a major problem here. We have a $22 trillion budget deficit. We have massive amounts of debt that we accrue every single year because, well, you know what? We care more about our social programs. We care more about the votes. We care more about X, Y, and Z. We have more concern about our political future than we do about the current situation with our budget, with our debt, and with our tax rates. That's what they're really telling you right now, while the government shut down. Right now, while they're saying that the only way that they're going to actually approve an extended 2-week budget is if we start addressing immigration reform or immigration issues or DACA amnesty. Whatever they want to talk about, that's their priority right now. And I don't care. If that's what they want to say, then thank God for President Trump to actually say, you know what, I love the branding of this. Never before in a long time have the Republicans been able to brand this the way they need to. They've been struggling with branding for a long time. Now we have the Schumer shutdown. Good. It is the Schumer shutdown because they would rather have the government shut down than actually address immigration reform the legitimate way. And I don't care. Fine. If that's what you want, then we'd rather have the government shut down anyways. Shut it down. Let it ride out until you continue to panic and finally cave in, because we're not going to, or we better not. We don't want to see us cave in. We don't want to see us finally give in and say, well, we tried. It's not going to happen this time. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason coming up in just a minute. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Along with KGPT TV channel 2610. Whether you're watching it, listening to it, welcome aboard, my friends. It's a government shutdown kind of Monday morning. That's right. Even though the government may be shut down, we're excited to get the day rolling. We're excited to set the tone, start the day, and get pumped up for what may lead, even without the government's help of doing so.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's
is 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I want to ask you the question, how difficult is it to start your day today without the government being there to help you out? It is shut down on day number 3. It is shut down today, potentially all day, potentially. They're voting on a bill as of noon today in order to try and reopen it that will include, by the way, an extension of the budget for 2 weeks until February 8th, with the potential of immigration reform and DACA decision-making included into this, or with the acknowledgement that within the 2 weeks they must come to some type of immigration reform. They must come to some type of immigration decision, and that includes DACA one way or another. And what happens there, only time will tell. So we shall see what happens with the bill as of noon today. But as of right now, I want to hear from you on how difficult it is. It was very difficult for me today. The alarm went off like normal. I took a shower like normal. I got dressed like normal. The car started like normal. I pulled into the driveway here like normal. I did my show prep like normal. The internet was working just fine like normal. The equipment here for radio and supposedly for TV, hopefully, is all working like normal. And all of that done without the government there telling me that it was all going to be okay and it was going to work. It was all working. It's been working just fine without the government wanting to control all of that. So I'm very curious how the shutdown was a travesty today and how it was going to destroy the entire world. I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure it out, but maybe we'll come to it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe someone else wasn't able to wake up the way they needed to because the government did not have that wake-up call. 316-721-8255. Over the weekend, if you were not aware, there were a few different marches. The March for Life on Friday, which was a huge event. Hundreds of thousands of individuals showing up to the March for Life. I wonder if they have a final count. I'll do a little research and see if they have a final count on that one from Friday, which was massive. First time the president has ever spoken, an active president has spoken at the March for Life event in Washington, D.C. on Friday. Then we had on Saturday the Women's March for 2 years in a row. We haven't done this yet for our new TV viewers, but it's about time. We do this segment whenever it's appropriate, as sometimes we just need to understand exactly what we're dealing with
It's
here.
your Pinko Flaming Commie Corner.
That's exactly what we're up against here, as the march on Saturday was the march to allow women to have the voice, was allowing the I don't know when they don't have a voice any other time, but they had their voice heard on Saturday as they were protesting, not quite sure what. Year number 2 of wearing the pink hats to let you know, even though we shouldn't judge people based on their gender and their bodily parts, we should at least know exactly what bodily parts that these individuals had by wearing the pink hats on Saturday. The protest also included the protest of President Donald Trump, the protest of Republicans, the protest of the government shutdown, the protest of the not giving amnesty to DACA recipients, the protest of women having larger voices in the workplace, women having a larger voice in society, and not having to be stuck at home. Not quite sure how that all correlates all to one big lump sum of an activist movement of, hey, we're here to change something, and one direct message, because some people just get overwhelmed with numerous different messages, which seem to happen over the weekend. And they did in small towns all over the entire country. According to the Topeka Capital Journal, Women's March in Topeka. I know Trump is president. I know Brownback's still governor. Boo, according to this individual. I know Kobach's trying to be governor, so yeah, I'm marching against all of them. We're marching against their policies. We're marching against these two trying to send us back to the trumped-up country. Okay? That's the one from Topeka. See if you can find a correlation between all these, by the way. That was Topeka's Women's March. How about Wichita? Everyone's welcome to come, not just women. Anyone who supports women's rights and the equality of women is welcome to join. Because apparently Republicans just don't care about the equality of women. So that's the march from Wichita with their message. Voting rights activists also said the state's proof of citizenship laws fall harshest on women. This is what they're protesting here in Wichita, by the way, who often have to provide more than a birth certificate to provide their identity, as their names have changed through marriages. Oh, mon Dieu. You had to show not only your birth certificate, but a marriage license to show the difference in name. Oh my, I don't know how you survive. I don't know how you're able to get through the day. I know it's a really, really difficult thing. You had to show 2 types of documentation instead of 1. You must be discriminated against. Those male white elitists are really out to get you. Terrible travesties. Oklahoma City. Hundreds gathered on Saturday at the Capitol in Oklahoma City. We need a leader, not a creepy Twitter. Even in red states, women matter. I love the catchphrases on these. Even in red states, women matter. I think that Oklahoma has a lot of powerful women. I think the fact that we're doing this with the rest of the United States spreads volumes. I think it's time to elect more women into office to show that we really do care about our women. That's from the protest in Oklahoma City. Here's another one for you. More than 1,000 attend the Lincoln Women's March in Lincoln, Nebraska. We march, we run, we vote, we win, according to the chant. It's important to show that we have a voice and to show our daughters that we can speak our mind and speak up on an array of issues, whether it be the overall state of the presidency to education issues to encourage women to hold office. There's nothing wrong with that, but apparently you have to wear your pink hats in order to allow that to happen. And then down in Austin, Texas, another local one-ish, speakers took the stage. They touched on topics like immigration and DACA to women's rights and President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. An extremely important issue when it comes to women here in the United States is the capital of Israel being Jerusalem. So they had to include that, of course, in their march on Saturday. 721-8255-721-TALK. Did you partake in the Women's March, and what did you think of all these across the country on Saturday? Let's go to the phones. Phones lining up, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, this is Myron.
Myron, what's going on, sir?
Oh, about as happy as twins.
Very good.
Don't really think much or care much about the Women's March. But back to when you were talking about the judiciary needs more money, I kind of wonder if we put more money in it, can we get better judges?
Well, that'd be a good point. Myron, I appreciate it. I want to stay on this here for a second, but that's a good topic. I mean, if we're going to increase judiciary salaries, then maybe we could find some decent Supreme Court justices in the state to be able to make some proper decisions. It's a good point. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Josh.
Josh, what's going on, man?
Oh, not a whole lot. You were talking about waking up and the government shutdown not affecting you at all.
Sure.
When it comes to the military, though, not necessarily the military members, but their spouses and their dependents, those are the ones that really rely on that paycheck. These are folks that are getting, and it's been a long time since I've looked at the pay scale, but they're getting right around $34,000, $40,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And this morning, the personnel services is going to be absolutely flooded with military spouses calling personnel services to see what this is going to do to their paycheck.
Sure.
That part of it is an absolute tragedy that is unfortunate, since we're holding up all of this for roughly 800,000 DACA recipients, and then also the families of those that are going to be granted amnesty at some point.
That's a really good point, Josh. I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm really, I am really, really happy that President Trump has labeled it to talk about the military. Now, from what I've heard, many of the military that I'm close with, that are family and friends, have reached out and said that they will still be paid. And there is a small portion of the military that will be furloughed to where they'll still get their paycheck. It'll just be delayed in some cases. But the majority of the military will still get their pay. However, they should, all the military spouses, all the military members should be calling and saying, wait a second, are we going to get this pay, and are we going to get compensated for the work that they're doing? Because I'm really, really happy if for the first time under a government shutdown, when Democrats have been of the obstructionists here, that a president has come out and said that you're willing to shut down the government, which really has no effect on a whole lot of people, but you're willing to shut down the government and put the lives and the paychecks and the compensation for our military in jeopardy because you're willing to do that for illegal aliens in the country. for, as you mentioned, 800,000 plus, however many there may be in the country. You're willing to care more for the illegal aliens than you are for the actual military and the military personnel, which is absolutely pathetic. And I'm glad he's branding it that way. Will the military actually get harmed in it? Not really, not necessarily. They shouldn't, and if there is, then we need to cause even more of a ruckus about it. But that's the exact way that we need to brand this, because if they do get harmed, then you can see the priorities of the Democrats.
It's not just the harm immediately, but they have plenty to worry about as it is.
Sure.
With a 6-8 month deployment, there's absolutely no reason that they should worry about when they're going to get paid.
Exactly.
Not that they're going to lose out on that paycheck, but
but it's the principle of the thing. They're working day in and day out, protecting our freedoms, being overseas, putting their lives in jeopardy, doing what this country has called them to do, and they stood up and rose to the challenge, and they're putting their lives on the line, and then we have individuals here saying, no, you know what, I'd rather them not get compensated right away for defending our nation because we need to protect these individuals that are here illegally. It shows you the absolute perfect demonstration of the priorities of Democrats.
right.
Yeah, it burns me up. Josh, I love it, my friend. Have a good Monday morning to you. I appreciate you calling in. And try and get to work without the government. I know it's a difficult thing to do today, but a great point. Absolutely great point. That's one thing, even if you don't like President Trump, which, as you know, I was not the biggest fan of President Trump at the beginning. In the primaries, at least, I was not a fan. I was a Ted Cruz individual. I was the biggest supporter of Ted Cruz. Once Ted Cruz dropped out, then I jumped on board with President Trump to be able to beat the Democrats. It's just the way that we have to operate. And the more and more that things that he does, I am more and more content. I am more and more happy with what he's doing because the Schumer shutdown. Let's start branding it that way. The Schumer shutdown. It's the Schumer shutdown. That's what we have to show. That's what we have to push because we have to prove that the Democrats are the ones shutting this down. Yes, we have a majority of Republicans in the Senate, but it's a very narrow margin, and we have to have 60 votes, not 50, which is what we got on Saturday when we tried to continue on, and it didn't work. We got the 50 to 49. It didn't happen because we need 60 votes, which means we need Democrats on board, and Democrats will not get on board, and they would rather shut down and harm the military than they will to actually show that their priority is with the illegal aliens and the DACA recipients as opposed to the military personnel. That's what we're up against right now. How do we change that? I don't know. How long will the government shutdown continue? I don't know. They're going to vote at noon today to try and do something, and they promise that they'll do some type of immigration reform within the next 2 weeks, which I find highly unlikely. To be honest with you, I find it highly unlikely where we're going to actually come to an agreement within the next 2 weeks. It took us 3 months to do a tax cut and to find a way to do a tax cut, and now they want to do immigration reform with the Democrats controlling the situation for the next 2 weeks, in a 2-week span. Because if we don't, then we'll shut down the government again, and then Mitch McConnell said that he would vote on giving amnesty to some DACA recipients. We're setting ourselves up to fail, and we need to be very careful about how we move forward with this. Luckily, the White House has made the statement that as long as they continue to try and support illegal aliens, then there's not going to be a discussion. Continue to block that. Do not allow them to have any gains, any traction, any momentum from the progressive side. We cannot allow that. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Sean.
Sean, what's going on, sir?
Oh, hey, better than our friends up in Colby and Goodland, huh?
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, hey, I got a couple points. One is this Women's March, and they're now complaining that women have to show more ID. I mean, why are they mad at that? They should be mad that these women actually changed their last name to comply with men.
That is true. They gave up their entire livelihood to have to change their last name to show that they're married to an individual. So, that right there is probably sexist.
And they bowed to men and changed their name to a male. Why? I don't know why they're not outraged over that fact. But anyway, they won't be. But
even if they're like San Francisco, where they try and do the hyphenated name and they do their last name that they cap it in the hyphen, the new name, they still have to get a birth certificate or a marriage certificate that shows the difference in the name from adding a secondary part of your last name. So you'd still have to do that regardless. So, you're right. Really, I guess men should be changing their last name to the women's, right?
That would make things equal.
Yes, that's right. Then we'll be equal.
Yeah. Hey, on this government shutdown, I think one thing that's getting missed in all this, and is going to really come back and bite the Democrats and liberals in particular, in their hind end, is that Trump has actually done something brilliant that Obama didn't do. Obama shut down the government and then made the people feel the pain.
Yes.
Shut down the national parks. Had more people out there keeping people out than they did beforehand to welcome people in. If you remember right, at the Washington Mall and everything else, keeping the vets out, they had to have, all these park employees out there to keep us out.
Exactly.
And one thing that Trump has done is he said, well, guys, your national parks are open. Go and enjoy them.
Yep.
Have at it. Unfortunately, we won't have anybody there to welcome you. Okay. So what's the effect of that? People are going to go to the Washington Monument and to the World War II Memorial and all the great things there, and they're going to go and enjoy them, and they're going to say, what does the government do here? I got to enjoy this without them.
Shocker, right? No, you're absolutely right. I remember that discussion because Barack Obama had mentioned every time the government shuts down, it is the worst thing because it punishes everybody. And not only was it just, like you mentioned, it's open, you can go do your thing, but there's going to be no government employee to welcome you. No, we're going to go and kick you out of the national monuments in Washington, D.C. We're going to shut down the tours of the White House. We're going to shut down all the national parks and forests in the country so that way you're not allowed to go out and enjoy nature. We're going to shut all of this down because that's what happens during a government shutdown. And that's why you should be scared of it. And now people are shutting down, and it's like, oh, I can still go and do whatever I want to, and oh, darn, the government's not there, but I can still do it, and it's completely fine. It's a big, vast difference, and some people, hopefully, are going to start waking up and saying, wait a second, maybe a government shutdown's not as bad as it seems to be because I can still do everything I want to, and the government's just not operating like they don't on the weekends anyways.
Yep, and I had friends that are in the ag industry, and they were asking questions about whether Kansas Department of Ag was going to be open on Monday. And, it was probably a legitimate question, except it was the Kansas Department of Ag.
Right.
So what they're finding out now is, wait a minute, the government doesn't even do Department of Ag work for us here in Kansas? What do we need that monument in Washington, D.C. that is a 4-city block building made of stone that houses thousands of employees? And my God, I just found out they don't do anything for me.
They don't do anything. That's a great point.
So why do we need them? Let's start saying, why do we need them?
That's a good point. I mean, we're not supposed to have those departments in the first place, let alone actually try and control everything we do on a daily basis. Sean, I love it. We got to take a break, my friend, but you're right on. Try and go through your day today and just think about how your day is different going to work, taking a lunch, doing your thing, driving home from work, living and spending time with your family, doing all of that without the government being open. See if your life is really any different. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
Speaking of, by the way, the Women's March that happened over the weekend, we will be speaking with one of the organizers of the Women's March from Saturday on the show on Wednesday. Looking forward to that one, trying to talk about the purpose of it, because I just read about the different messages spread by the different cities, and as far as I'm aware, there wasn't really a unified message of what the protest was actually supposed to be for. Look, I'm all for protests, and you can protest whatever you want to and make whatever comments you want. I really don't care. It doesn't bother me. But the fact that you don't have a unified message kind of defeats the entire purpose of rallying together to try and change something, right? Or maybe you just feel better about yourself because you went out and wore a pink hat and stayed warm out in the cold. I don't know. Bottom of the hour news coming up. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
It's time for some common sense, sanity, and reason.
You can't handle the truth.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Good Monday morning to you right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's a government shutdown Monday. Whatever will we do? I want to hear from you on how the government may have affected you by, your alarm still going off, you still driving to work, driving your coffee, working, doing your thing, and how, the government, though, it needs to be open for you to survive. I want to take a call here real quick. Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, State Representative JR Claeys is going to be joining us, and we have a special guest on the line to give us a quick update as well. But before we get to him, I do want to take a quick phone call so that way we can squeeze that in as well. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I really appreciate you having Trobert on. He's a world of wealth.
Oh, he is a genius and a brainiac. I don't know how he remembers so many numbers and facts and stats, and I can only hope that we can try and push as much of that info out to the listeners as we possibly can.
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest problem that we have in the state is we're held hostage to our Constitution, the state Constitution.
Sure.
Because we can't do anything without 2/3. Okay? So that means they're going to have 2/3 even to get an amendment to change the Constitution on anything to do with anything, and especially with education.
Which is going to be very difficult, not only just normally, but especially with a more, I want to say, progressive legislature with a lot of Republicans that don't go necessarily with the conservative movement, with a lot of Democrats that feel a little more energized over the last couple of years. And it's not only just difficult to get normal things done, but to do a drastic, big change to the Constitution, like an amendment to education finance or to the Supreme Court, however they end up phrasing it, is going to be very, very difficult to actually force through and make happen this year.
Right. And that also goes along with how it affects at the federal level, because we can't do anything with Convention of States because of this 2/3. We're held hostage totally in this state by our Constitution.
Exactly. Which I wish to God, even Democrats you would think would want to jump on board with not allowing an oversight of the federal government trying to abuse the states, which shouldn't happen. And we can do other things other than just the Article 5 convention as well. But that's a huge way to actually make a bold statement, is saying we need to sign up for this Article 5. We're going to start moving forward with this message, and we're going to try and change the federal government. You would think even Democrats who would despise the Trump administration right now would actually want to take part of that, so that way the Trumpism doesn't affect them at the local level.
Maybe they're just serial abusers.
Well, that is very true on that front as well. Ron, I love it. I appreciate the call, my friend. And actually, we can talk a little bit about that with our next guest, as he is one of our state representatives who fights this fight on a daily basis. It's very difficult for him to do so sometimes. But John Whitmer calling in, giving us an update. John, what's happening, my friend?
Welcome to day 3 of the Schumer shutdown.
The Schumer shutdown. It is a terrible, scary thing. I don't know how we actually woke up and is driving to work this morning. I don't know how we were actually able to make it, because the government's not there to say, good morning, person. I'm going to help you get to work this morning.
Yeah, my car started. The traffic is flowing. I expected the world to come to an end today. So.
It almost did, John. It almost did. And I was actually talking about in the first hour, not only does the federal government shut down, and it's less likely, but states shut down as well. And we ran through some of the different ones. Even in last year, I mean, we had 2 states shut down for 3-4 days, New Jersey and Maine, over some periods of time based on different constitutional crises or budgetary issues. Illinois shut down for 6 days back in 2015, 20 days for Minnesota back in 2011. States shut down as well. Do you think maybe to really drive home when we get to the point of towards the later end of this session of trying to figure out our budget with finance for education or Medicaid expansion or the amendment for the Constitution to the Supreme Court, that maybe we might need a state government shutdown for a bit?
Well, if we weren't up there mucking things up, it might be a good thing for folks. Keep in mind, last year, what was the end result? $1.2 billion retroactive tax increase. So maybe if we weren't up there, things might have gotten better instead of worse. So
exactly.
You never know. This whole thing, Andy, I don't know. I mean, it's a whole lot to do about nothing, a lot of finger pointing. But I think we all know what this is about. You've got a group of partisan left-wing Democrats that are holding up government funding, military pay, the CHIP program for illegal immigration. And
Sure.
That's what it comes down to. Spin it however they want. even the AP and the New York Times have called this the Democrat shutdown.
Sure.
So they can spin it all they want to, but we know what it is, and eventually I think they'll cave, and we'll get moving on with the people's business.
Well, you know what, which I have to say, I am actually very happy and encouraged with the fact that for the first time in a long time, Republicans are standing their ground, most of them, except for a few, little interesting individuals, but most of them are standing their ground, are saying, you know what, we're not going to let you brand this to make it our fault this time, like you did so many times under the Obama administration. You're not going to get everything you want as a message of quote-unquote compromise and us giving you whatever you want to. It's not going to happen, and we're going to shut down the government, and it's going to be your fault because you're not willing to work with us this time, and we're going to make sure everybody knows it's your fault, and we're going to make sure that you get on board with our agenda as opposed to us getting on board with your agenda. It feels really nice this time. Like I'm kind of excited about this government shutdown.
Well, part of it is that we're on the right side of the issue here. Whether you support or don't support DACA, and that's a separate discussion, that's a separate issue.
Sure.
It's not about DACA. It's about funding the government. Let's deal with that, get that done, and then you can address DACA. And, I've heard the arguments. I've seen last night, the news covered the story, and they had 2 DACA recipients on there, and one was 16 and one was well into her late 20s. And I thought to myself, well, a 16-year-old, I could be sympathetic. I get that story. But the one who was easily 28, 29, my first thought was, well, you're 28, 29 years old. Why aren't you a citizen by now? You've had plenty of time to go through that process. So there's got to be some understanding here. At what point are they accountable for their own actions? You can't just keep, so it's not a simple issue that you can tack onto a budget deal and just hope we all vote for.
Which here's the question. Why are we including a non-budgetary issue like immigration reform and amnesty for illegal aliens and willing to shut down the government for a non-budgetary issue during a government shutdown of a budgetary issue? I don't understand why they're linking the two together and saying either you include funding for amnesty or we're going to shut down the entire budget and we're not going to allow you to continue to operate on a regular basis.
Well, because they're in the minority and they're hoping to blackmail the majority, and that's what it comes down to. And I agree with you. I'm glad to see Congress and I'm glad to see the majority holding strong, and let's hope they do so. And if you start to hear them waver, then make phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
Call your senator, call Senator Moran, Roberts, and anybody else up there that starts to flutter. Keep in mind, even if it gets out of the Senate, then it's got to go through, Paul Ryan in the House and get through the White House. And I think more than likely, the Dems are going to have to cave on this before I think the majority will.
Well, they better have to. They better have to. And as you mentioned, I mean, you're right. We do have a strong enough majority in the House that even if the Senate tries to waver, the House is not going to allow something like that. Hopefully not. But from what it sounds like from McConnell's comments is that if they vote on this bill today, then they really want to look. It took us 3 months to do a tax cut at the end of last year, October, November, and December. Finally got it right before Christmas. It took us almost 3 months to do a major tax cut, and we've been talking about immigration reform. Now, Mitch McConnell's comments pretty much said, give us a 2-week budget extension, and we'll do immigration reform within a compacted 2 weeks to make sure you're happy, or else we'll vote to give amnesty for them at the end of it, so that way we don't shut down the government again. That's really almost the comment that Mitch McConnell made, and it's a little troubling.
That's not going to happen. Keep in mind, Obama's first 2 years, he had the same situation that Trump has had. He had both the House, he had Democrat majorities in the House and Senate, and a Democrat in the White House. Did he address immigration?
Right.
Did he put together an amnesty deal? Did he do anything for this issue? No. He had 8 years in the White House. He did nothing. So they're not going to resolve this in 2 weeks. It's a bigger issue.
It is a way bigger issue. You're not going to get all that you want to in 2 weeks and then think that you're going to feel comfortable with people actually knowing what's actually in it, with the congressmen and women actually feeling comfortable voting on something like that and ramming it through with a fast and furious message. And I don't think that's what President Trump would allow anyways, even if it did get through both chambers.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing we're seeing in Topeka. There's a lot of talk about how we're going to do $600 million more for schools, and we've got this compressed deadline from the courts. Notice we've done essentially nothing towards that, and We're already 2 weeks into the legislative sessions, because we know that getting it done in an election year with any kind of tax increase even my colleagues to the left of me, and that's the majority, even my colleagues who voted for it are not really inclined to do so again in an election year.
Sure. We're going to talk some more about that at greater extent with State Rep JR Claeys at the top of the next hour. But give us a little bit of a scoop from some of the discussions that we've had. When we talked to you during the session last year, you had mentioned numerous times, and many legislators did, where the conversation was pretty much, don't even talk about or think about doing a budget cut in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to happen. It's only regardless of how much tax increase we're going to see. And that was the discussion. Are those the same types of mentalities, ideas, visions, thoughts that people are having going into this year with all the potential more spending that we may see at the end of it?
I think at this point, a lot of us are still confused. The governor did a 180 when he came out with his budget, although a number of us, I would say a lot of us, are trying to just figure out if this is his budget or the lieutenant governor's budget or whose budget this is, because it certainly is a vast departure from anything we've seen from Sam.
Sure.
There's no money for a $600 million increase. It's just not there.
Even if you try and spread it out amongst 5 years.
Right. No, and he can't, because you can't obligate a subsequent legislature. So that's not an option. There really is no will for another tax increase. You've heard even Jim Ward say publicly that he won't vote for a tax increase.
Well, of course, it's an election year, and people just saw 2 tax increases, and they're going to, when they file in April, they're not going to be happy going to the voting booth again in November. They're not going to advocate for another tax increase. They're going to wait, say that the budget's okay for the next 2 years, go into 19 once they get back and say, we were wrong. We're actually going to have to do a tax increase now because we're going to be another $2 billion short.
Exactly. Go look at the Secretary of State's website, and you'll see how many primary opponents people have already.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there will tell you whether or not folks are, already the people who voted for that are feeling the pain of that vote.
Exactly.
There's no will for it. And similarly, there's no will. You've got spending issues all across the board other than education. And you've already seen it. The contractors who have been traditionally progressive, to use your term, they came out with a scathing article last week. Basically, it talked about pie and about one area of the family who's been eating more than their fair share of the pie. And now we understand that the regents are beginning to express the same concern, where you could literally have more than half of the budget go into one particular area, and their lobbyists publicly saying, let them eat cake.
Sure.
Sorry. And that it's just that mentality, that entitlement mentality that the folks in the education establishment have had for years is just growing. It's finally got to a point where it's fallen on deaf ears. It's
going to be the ongoing battle most of the session, and even though that it seems like you're in the minority and not a whole lot of people want to listen to you guys, I appreciate you guys keeping up the fight day in and day out with the Freedom Caucus and trying to stand your ground, so thank you for that. State Representative John Whitmer, surprise call from him as we move along with the session. Keep up the fight, my friend. Safe travels up to Topeka, and try not to breathe in too many of the weird fumes up in that area. It's a very difficult thing. Yeah.
Anytime, my friend, you call. Let me know if you ever need an update or anything. And next time you're on vacation, let me know.
Exactly. That's what we love it. We love it very much. State Representative John Whitmer, we'll get him back on the show again here real soon. One more break, wrapping up hour number 2 already. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM along with KGPT TV. Welcome aboard wherever you may be watching and or listening. We appreciate that very much. The Facebook Live as well, which we have had massive numbers hit that this morning. Welcome. We love you doing that as well. 316-721-8255. Coming up in hour number 3, State Representative JR Claeys going to be joining us here in just a few minutes. We have some calls waiting on the line we'll get to as well. But we got to check in. It's a Monday. This portion of The Voice of Reason, as it always is on a Monday, brought to you by the AARP. Whether it's the Fraud Watch Network, the Retirement Calculator, getting involved in the community, or even getting prepped for your taxes, the AARP can help you. Check them all out at aarp.org/KS for the state of Kansas. Marin Turner on the line back with us. Marin, how are you this morning?
Good morning. How are you, Andy?
Hey, we're living the dream. The sun's slowly starting to come up, and it's I guess going to be cold and potentially snowy, and I don't know. It's wintertime, which I'm just not a fan of.
Well, it's just so unfair. The weather was great yesterday, and now we're back to snow.
It just teased us just a little bit.
I
Drives me
know.
nuts. I cannot believe we're talking about it already, but we are towards the end of January. We talked about how last year went fast. Good golly. We are at the end of January. Tax season's right around the corner, and the AARP, you guys always have opportunities to help individuals prepare for their taxes with the tax aid sites, even right here in Sedgwick County. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, our AARP Foundation is actually the nation's largest all-volunteer free tax preparation service. We provide free tax assistance and preparation for taxpayers with low and middle incomes, but we have a special attention to people who are over 60. We provide the service as part of our mission to help people who cannot afford to pay a tax preparer. And so our volunteers spend lots of hours preparing to pass the tax certification test. They are trained by the IRS, so they are up to date on all of the new tax laws. And just last season, they prepared over 3,788 tax returns, helping people with low and moderate incomes save over $1 million in tax preparation fees. So we're hoping that if you need some help with your tax preparation, you fit into that category, we'd love to help you. You can log on to our AARP tax aid site. That is TaxAide, TaxAide, at aarp.org, or you can call toll-free 888-687-2277 to find out where the nearest tax aid site is to you. And again, we have 14 right there in Sedgwick County.
Beautiful. So you mentioned you could even just have someone send an email to you guys asking questions, either on location or to help at taxaid at aarp.org, and they can just ask some questions or send some stuff and be able to have some aid from that way as well.
That is correct. We
cool.
provide information online year-round if you have a question about your taxes. But if you'd like to go into a site, we encourage you to make an appointment because we don't like people to have to wait to have their taxes prepared. So we encourage you to make an appointment, call the number, or log on to find out where the tax aid site is near you. Also, it gives you information on what you need to bring with you, such as your photo ID. If you want to have a direct deposit, you need to bring a checkbook. You need to bring identifying information, just a lot of things that you need to bring for your tax preparer.
Well, sure, there is a lot that goes into it, and I hate it's always scary when you go there maybe the day of or a couple of days before April 15th, you're ready to file, and then you don't have the right paperwork, you don't have the right documentation, you don't file properly because you didn't get all the information you needed, and then you could potentially be late, and the government really doesn't like it when you're late on giving them your money.
Well, they really don't like for you to be late, and there's no reason for you to be late if you go through your tax aid site. So again, we hope that people will go and use the services of the AARP Foundation Tax Aid Program.
I love it. One more time, what's the phone number and email someone can send, make a phone call or send that info out and get some help?
Well, you can log on to TaxAide, that's TaxAide at aarp.org, or call the toll-free number 888-687-2277.
Very good. Marin Turner with the AARP. We love chatting with you on Monday. Have a great week. Make sure you don't get under the weather with some of this weather going back and forth. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
Thanks, Andy.
Always a pleasure there. That's the Marin Turner with the AARP. We'll talk to them again next Monday. Got some calls on the line. Stay here. Wrapping up hour number 2. When we come back, we'll also talk with State Representative JR Claeys as we get some updates again from the legislature on what to expect this week in week number 3, as we're already 2 weeks into the session. And what's happened? Whole lot of nothing. That's about it. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 3 of the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Along with on the TV side, KGPT TV channel 2610. Welcome aboard, whether you're listening to it or watching it. It doesn't matter. This is the fastest growing program in the entire state of Kansas and beyond. Even, I know it's really difficult to hear, but even when the government shut down. I know. I don't know how I was actually able to get up out of bed today. I'm not sure how we were able to actually have our cup of coffee, start our cars, get dressed, take a shower, whatever we end up doing. I mean, it's all regulated by the government, and the fact that the government's not awake and open on a Monday makes it very difficult. But yet, we'll still set the tone. We'll still get you pumped up and excited for the day. We will still do what we have to do as the taxpayers. It's a Monday morning in the Voice of Reason.
Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
There it is, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I want to hear from you today. How difficult was it for you to get your day started, or maybe ending if you work third shift and you're listening, to get your day going without the government operating right now? You can shoot me a message all over social media on email, andy@kqamradio.com, which many people have been doing lately, sending some articles or comments of the show. I appreciate that very much. The social media, Facebook Live today is blowing up. I don't know why, but I love it, and I appreciate that very much. So if you're watching on there, you can leave a comment, ask a question, whatever you want to do there as well. Let's get right to our guest. I'm really excited as we continue the discussions about the legislative session. Week number 3 has begun, and what's been done, I don't really know. But hey, you know what? We are there, and we can be excited about something.
We did it! We did it! We did it! Yay!
Yeah, there it is. And State Representative from the Salina area, Mr. JR Claeys on the line with us. JR, what's happening, my friend? It's been a while.
Hey, Andy, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It has been a while.
It has been a while. It's great to get you back on the program. I know that you were a guest when I was out towards the end of last year, and Denidre Herbert was on, and I appreciate you jumping on with her. But week number 3, the legislative session, the first I got to ask is, what have we done? What's been going on up there?
Well, first, you were mentioning, getting started this morning, and I know there's some folks in West and Northwest Kansas who are having a difficult time getting started this morning. So I want to give a big thanks to the Kansas Highway Patrol, our KDOT crews, and of course our National Guard troops,
sure,
who are working through the shutdown and the storm. We do have National Guard troops who are impacted by that shutdown, and they are out there working through the storm. The governor declared a state of emergency, and we do have, I do believe he sent 30 troops out there to do search and rescue efforts. So
wow, it has been pretty brutal out there for sure.
Yeah, it's brutal, and the impact of what's happening and what the Democrats are doing, it does trickle down to the state level, and it does have a direct impact on folks, especially when there are crisis situations like this. So a big thanks to those troops who are working, and especially the many troops who are working without paychecks. It's absolutely getting to the point of being ridiculous, and the Democrats have really caused some serious problems here with what the stunt they're pulling.
Sure. I do have to ask you this because I don't quite get it. Maybe I'm not smart enough to actually understand this, but the reason the government's shutting down at the federal level is because Democrats want the DACA amnesty and want some kind of immigration reform in a budget bill, which I just don't get. Why are they willing to shut down the government for a non-budgetary issue per se? When we just ran out of money, we need to extend the budget. We need to look at budget reform and spending reforms and so on and so forth. But that's not even the discussion that we're having right now. It's either we give amnesty to DACA recipients during a budget extension, or we shut down the government. To me, it just doesn't link. I don't understand the connection of .A to .B here.
Yeah, and DACA, of course, isn't up until March, so there's quite a bit of time to deal with DACA at that federal level. But yeah, you're right. I don't quite understand it either, except to make some political points as we kind of head into the election year. And this is their opportunity, so they're going to do it. But we're taking the security and the services of Americans and putting them behind the security and services of illegal immigrants, and I think that's fundamentally wrong, and it's not something that the American people are going to stand for. So I look forward to people like Claire McCaskill over in Missouri defending what she's doing over there on the federal level in the Senate. So we'll see what happens come election time.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch. And we're looking at some of the ways the government can shut down, and state governments are actually able to shut down at times as well. And we talked about how 2 or 3 different states had shut down last year, and it's really been happening throughout the last few years for different reasons all across the board. Do you think that with the debate that we're having this year, when it comes to the finances, when it comes to education or Medicaid, when it comes to the smaller chip-in programs that we need, from corrections officers to the judiciary that apparently needs more money as well again after we gave them the salary increases last year, with all of these things, all the small things, and then of course highway projects that we need to extend and create, with all of this happening, is there a potential of our state government shutting down this year?
Yeah, and I think the threat's always been pretty real. There have been 3 or 4 times that we've sent out furlough notices and let people know that, this is what's coming if a budget isn't passed by this deadline. And usually that's, to get everything funded by July 1st. So when you've seen those historically long sessions that have run 113, 114 days, those are the ones that keep pushing it up to the wire in June, where if a budget isn't passed, we do end up with July 1 furloughs. So yeah, I think it is a very real possibility. The court's deadline, however, in the school finance mess decree, lawsuit, whatever you want to call it, that decree to spend $900 million more has a deadline of April 30th, which is an awkward deadline for a legislative session because we actually leave April 6th. That's the end of the regular session.
Sure.
So if a solution isn't found by April 6th, we do leave. The session is over, and then we return in May. So the question at this point is, well, if we hit April 6th and nothing's happened, what's the plan? That's the end. So do we leave, and then the court is upset, and then we come back in May and try to make nice, ask for forgiveness instead of permission, I suppose, and see if we can't come up with the $900 million the court is demanding.
Is that what it's going to take again this year? Last year we had our extended session, our special session, for some degree, as we talked about tax rates. And this year, I mean, we're looking at some pretty hefty issues, which I know a lot of people don't want to address during a election year because that could potentially damage them on how they vote for it. But we have the $600 million that we're either going to give to schools or not. That could go up, by the way. I've heard anywhere from $600 million to $1.5 billion for education. The Medicaid expansion that could potentially cost us $2 billion. Then all the small stuff. I mean, we have some hefty issues to address, and last year we couldn't get our heads around how to actually make it happen, and we had that special session. I don't want to see that happen again this year.
Right, and when you say $600 million, the court is demanding $600 million in addition to the almost $300 million that was put in for the coming budget year. So when I say $900 million, it's because that money that $300 that we're already spending hasn't been counted yet. It hasn't been spent. So
sure.
It is $900 million that is the court's demand from today's base that we're sitting at. So it's a sizable sum of money, and that seems to be the minimum they'll accept. So yeah, I suppose there is the potential for it to go up to $1.5 billion. And remember the tax hike that we saw, this historical tax hike. When people call it a $1.2 billion tax hike, that's over 2 years. So that was $600 million per year. So if you're looking at an additional $600 million, you're doubling that tax hike, and there's not an opportunity to go after those small businesses that were put back on the tax rolls and whacked at full freight again.
Sure.
So that big chunk of money that came in because they went from 0 to 5, that chunk is not something you get to go after again. You've got to raise the rate now substantially to pull that in, and it take about a 2% hike overall in the tax rate to get those dollars in on the income tax side. So it's not a small amount of money. It's definitely a pretty sizable tax hike.
Let's start from the beginning of this session. The first Tuesday of the session, Governor Brownback made his State of the State address, and you had one of the more entertaining comments and responses to the State of the State with Governor Brownback advocating for the additional $600 million now span over a 5-year period in order to compensate for and comply for the Supreme Court's decision, which harmed and upset a lot of conservatives. First off, I love the comments, and you should mention why you made that comment. But second off, do you think that comment from a mostly conservative governor who's fought the spending increases over the past few years and has fought to do what he thought was right with conservative principles in mind, do you think this is going to make the discussion more difficult in the legislature this year on what we should do now that the conservatives seem to be even broken on this?
Well, there's a reason he has a 20% approval rating, Andy, and that's because he's universally disliked on all sides. The issue is that the image of Governor Brownback as a conservative is flawed. Yes, he's more conservative than Sebelius or Graves, but to say that he is conservative, I think, is a stretch. He does not give us current resources budgets. He violates the law when he gives us our budgets at the beginning of the year and says, "Here's my budget." It has the spending in it, but it also has revenue in it, and that's not legal. But he continues to put things like tobacco taxes in to make budgets balance. What the governor should be doing, and he should be doing under law, is giving us budgets that show the cuts that he would make given the current resources that are available. What that does for us in the budget process, because we're only there for 3 months, is it tells us what he would do in those agencies to reduce their spending. If we don't have that, we have to do things like the A&M study, where we have to dive in and have some outside group come in and look at these agencies. Because, again, we're there for 3 months. There's not this opportunity for us to do this deep dive into these agencies and say, well, this program doesn't work. We need to get rid of it. This is a giant waste of taxpayer money. Let's get rid of it. The governor should be doing that. And he failed to do that year after year after year, Andy. He was not fighting government spending. He was writing the check, and he was saying, hey, let's just hike this tax to pay for it. And in that way, I can get away with everyone still liking me and not stirring the pot with all these different groups, and you guys can get stuck holding the bag. So we've been through it one too many times. And when the governor came up there and said, over 5 years, I've solved the problem. Here's $600 million, Cord, and he gets to walk away, drop the mic, head out of town. The budget balances year one, and that's it. And then it stops. Not to mention the fact that the court was pretty clear that they're not going to accept a phase-in.
Sure.
So what does that leave us with? That leaves us with a constituency out there, the folks out here listening to the show right now, who are under the impression that Governor Brownback just solved the problem. Well, he didn't. He didn't solve the problem at all.
Well, it kind of reminds me of like the President Trump budget proposal when he proposes one and the legislature, and I think this happens on numerous years and a lot of places where the governor or the president will propose it and they're just like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to kind of do our own thing. And not really defending Governor Brownback in that sense, but over the last few years, with any of the budgets, has the legislature looked at his budget seriously, or have they been that bad to say that we can't work with any of this? We got to start fresh.
Well, we've started implementing zero-based budgeting because of what's been happening over the past few years, and it just takes time to get to that point. So we did a test with the Department of Agriculture in doing zero-based budgeting, where they came back and they said, our budget's, about $46 million. I'm using rough numbers here. It's about $46 million. Turns out zero-based budgeting tells us it costs about $47 million. But then what we learned along the way is we're underfunding this program, we're overfunding this program. Oh, and these 3 programs can go because they're not doing their stated objectives. They're not reaching those objectives. So we learn that, sometimes you might get a higher number, but boy, do you learn what's effective and what's not when you use zero-based budgeting. So
Sure.
That helped us a lot. And then you find out, well, if you get rid of the stuff that doesn't work, you can actually run it off $43 million. taxpayers saved $3 million. The services got better because now the dollars are going into the programs at the amounts that they need to complete their goals. And, you're overall, you're going to have a better government service at a better price when you go in and do that kind of deep dive. So
sure,
we'd like to see more of that out of agencies, doing the zero-based budgeting and really diving into those budgets. But that's very difficult for us to do as legislators when we're there for 3 months.
Absolutely. We got about 2 minutes left. So we're talking with State Representative JR Claeys on the legislative session. So far, over the last 2 weeks, as you mentioned, I mean, you guys really haven't voted on anything yet. They're kind of just crafting things. The ideas are floating. The committees are working hard. One of the most substantial bills, do you think? What's popped out in your mind is as important that's gaining traction that you may see? We saw really the one story of legislation coming out of there was the agricultural hemp bill for research that came out of the House and is sitting on the Senate. But other than that, we really haven't heard of anything, and it may just because the committees are just trying to draft everything right now.
Yeah, that's a real good bill that you bring up, the one that allows for some commercialization of hemp products, and these are non-marijuana products. But there are cash crops that our state can really take advantage of and haven't been able to in the past because of federal laws. And now that they've relaxed those, we're able to expand agriculture in the state, and I think that's a good thing. Again, that's not marijuana by any means.
Sure.
But then there are a couple other bills I think that are pretty important. We are looking at some bills that would establish committees to begin discussing the next transportation plan. Obviously, we've got some serious issues in the state of Kansas with our T-Works program. It's been going on since 2011, and usually those 10-year plans, we want to get a head start on discussing what the next one looks like. And with the constant funding issues with the T-Works program, we're going to need to come up with a new and better path for our next program. So that's something that I see really rising to the top and needing to be debated and discussed and really get that to the forefront, because our highway system is something that we can sell to businesses who want to move here.
Sure.
And then also, just transportation is such a huge part of everyone's everyday life that we need to have a plan that works for Kansas.
Well, and I think that you're right. I mean, we need to focus on increasing it and making it better. I mean, we're already decent. I know we're number 3 in the country for the best state highways, but we need to make sure that stays that way, because it's been fine from borrowing it and kind of holding off some projects for now. But if we do that for too long, then we will start seeing that slip, and I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, and really, when you see a interchange being built, that's where the dollars start coming in. Every time we build an interchange, a hotel follows, a gas station, a travel center,
sure,
a restaurant. Sometimes you even get housing developments that follow those interchanges, and that's where you really see economic development happen. And it's a relatively minor investment on the part of the state to put in an interchange on the interstates and 4-lane highways. So we want to be able to do those things, and those are the projects that have been stopped.
Sure.
The ones that actually have that impact. The only thing we're doing right now is maintenance.
Just
we're in maintenance mode completely. And there's not enough money to even do that and maintain it at the level that we're accustomed to. So it's going to be difficult to keep going down this road where we don't have the dollars to be able to keep our system up, because it is something that all of us use, and it is something that is used by business to get their goods to market and agriculture to get their goods to market. So it's very important that we have a quality interstate system and highway system.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of a slow start so far for the session, but it's going to be ending with a big bang, I foresee, and it's going to be kind of entertaining to watch. So we got to get you back on as this progresses, as more things come out of committee and the discussions begin to actually happen. State Representative JR Claeys, it's always an honor to get you on the show, my friend. Keep up the good fight. I know you guys seem like you're kind of in the minority with conservatism up there, but keep it up, and whatever we can do to help out on this side, we always want to do so. So appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Always a great time. 25 minutes past the hour. We'll wrap up this one. Get your calls when we come back. We'll talk about what's actually being affected with the government shutdown and more. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back in. Went a little longer in that last segment. That's all right. Appreciate State Representative JR Claeys sticking on a little bit longer with us. Bottom of the hour news coming up. When we come back, we'll shift gears. We'll talk about what's actually closed with the government shutdown today and if you've been affected. If it was more difficult for you to get back to work today without the government helping you. This is the voice of reason.
When it takes two to read the news,
I'm trying to warn everybody and nobody takes me cereal.
You're in the wrong place. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, 1480 AM and 102.5 FM, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, KQAM. We also want to welcome on KGPT TV, channel 2610 as well. Good morning to you guys. No matter where you're listening, how you're listening, we appreciate you joining the show very much. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today as we wrap up the last half hour or so of the program. Have you been affected by the government shutdown today? The government not there to help you wake up this morning. I've had a couple different listeners asking questions about what exactly is shut down with the government shutdown today and what's open. So we'll talk about that here in just a second on how it is affecting or not affecting you and what it actually... They really just say non-emergency personnel, not emergency services. So if it's not an emergency, you don't need to shut it down. Which my question is if it's non-emergency, why does the government have it in the first place? The things that make you go, Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Eddie.
Hey, Eddie. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine. I'm just sitting in my rocking chair, watching my favorite little morning TV program, and and you're looking good. I like your gold medallion with the big A on it.
Thank you. Yes. See, I am when I wear this, it is the day for me to be a superhero. There you go.
Now, talking seriously about the government shutdown, it doesn't bother me one bit, and I don't care. I mean, I should be self-sufficient enough that I don't need the government to be there every moment of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe once a month or something like that, but I don't need the government every day.
Exactly.
I mean, that's crazy.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Now, JR Claeys, State Rep, he did mention, the some of the KDOT workers and some of the individuals. I mean, it's snowing, and actually, it just started snowing here in Wichita. No, I'm not happy about that, but it's the big storms are happening in other parts of the state, and some of these individuals not getting some of the federal aid, which means that they are technically furloughed. They're working, but they won't get their paychecks right away. But we need to remember they still are going to get a paycheck. It's just not going to be immediate, potentially, depending on how long this government shutdown is. So it really doesn't affect anybody or anything. It's going to be okay.
Well, as far as talking common sense, I think common sense should say that if you're a government employee and if you're needed for an emergency, you should be there no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't be tied to anything. I don't know, this government shutdown is, to me, in my personal opinion, it's just a bunch of silliness. Seriously,
it really is.
It really is.
Not to mention, they're mentioning this is day number 3 of the shutdown. The first 2 days were during the weekend when no one cares anyways, and they would have been shut down regardless of whether it was it was a government shutdown, quote unquote, or not.
I mean, let me ask you this. You as a television radio person, how does that affect your station, or does it even affect your station at all?
No. And if we do need the government, if there's a crazy terrorist attack and the big EAS system goes and interrupts everything, that constitutes just part of the emergency services and personnel, which means they're still working, which means that would still operate on the radio and or TV as they need to do so. So it affects nothing other than parts of the FCC being shut down. So maybe I wouldn't quite get a fine if I let something slip on the air, which I wouldn't do anyways.
Of course you wouldn't. You're a decent young man.
Well, thank you. That's what we try, yes.
Oh, by the way, when you first came on the radio, 2 years ago, something like that, you didn't give your age, and you wanted to make people believe you're 40. And then about a year later, you wanted people to believe that you're in your 30s. And actually, last week, you admitted that you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
Just how much longer is this going to go on?
It's going to keep going.
You're still in high school.
Pretty soon it's going to be like, I'm like almost 20. No, it's a really hard thing because, like I mentioned before, the reason I haven't given my age, or I didn't before, was because people just don't take me seriously. They don't take young kids seriously on the radio. Oh, they haven't experienced life. They don't know what they're talking about. And I'm just going to dismiss them and ignore them. And then people don't listen to what I have to say. So, but it's really hard to keep that age hidden now that they can see my face on TV and on Facebook Live and everything now. So I kind of had to give it away.
Anyway, Andy, you have the most beautiful day, and you're looking good.
I appreciate it very much, Eddie. Thank you much there. That's I love it right there, being able to check out the radio and the TV side all at the same. It's really tough to keep your age hidden when you look at my face every day, and you can gauge the age that I have. And again, it's tough because he's just young. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I waited, and luckily now we have 3 years under, 3 years under the belt for the radio show. So now, hopefully, I have just a little bit of validity to that way. Even though I may be on the younger end, we still get taken seriously on this program. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Wallace, what's going on, sir?
Well, the government's closed and the sky is falling.
It is.
Up here in flyover country, we call it snow.
We call it snow, yes.
We call it snow, so the sky's falling.
I don't know. The sky is falling. I'm surprised that the snowflakes right now are not the frogs falling out of the sky showing the Armageddon has happened, because the government is not there to take care of us today. It's a very scary ordeal. I don't know how we woke up this morning.
Well, as a conservative, I take care of myself, so the government being closed doesn't bug me much. But, listening, and I listened to a lot of news over the weekend, and they keep talking, and here's what's interesting is they keep saying, we got, the Republicans, they want to open a government, and then they'll talk about, solving DACA, and the Democrats, they just want DACA, solved now. And what the only solution that they seem to be able to come up with is amnesty. That's the solution they're talking about. And I want to pull my hair out, and I don't have enough left to pull out.
You're right. When they talk about we're going to resolve this, we're going to do immigration reform, and we're going to resolve the amnesty issue or the DACA issue, that means either they're going to extend the DACA program, or they're going to give the amnesty and say, well, we don't need the program anymore, so we're just going to give it. I have not yet heard a single Republican in leadership position like that say we're going to resolve the DACA issue by saying that we're going to allow you to have an opportunity to try and sign up naturalization the proper way. But if you're here it's illegally, and you came here illegally, and you've been here illegally for the last 20, 30, 40 years, and you have not done anything about it, then you are an illegal alien, and we're going to punish you appropriately. I haven't heard anybody say that.
Well, no, and what's interesting is in 1986, we've said this before, we did amnesty in 1986, and the law, which is the law that's on the books, it's currently in effect, was to include border security and worker verification, everything they keep talking about. Well, yeah, and so why doesn't someone stand up and say, look, Democrats, you got 100% of your amnesty in 1986. We tried it your way, Lindsey Graham. We tried it your way, Shutdown Chuck. And so now we're going to do something, and we're actually going to do the other half of the law, which is you've had 31 years of your amnesty. Now we're going to give our people the other half of the law, which is the security. The solution is border security. And here, if I'll be brief on this, here's what I would do if I were the president. I'd say, immigration is completely a mess. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop all legal immigration into this country temporarily until a few things happen. One, we get the wall built. Two, we get 90% of the people who are here illegally, whether illegal crossings or visa overstays. We got to get the problem fixed. Till 90% of them gone, nothing happens. Mm-hmm. And then third, I want new legislation that ends chain migration and ends the visa lottery program. When these things happen, I will restart legal immigration. And it's interesting because I did hear someone say from the White House an idea that I had floated, which is if they're going to let 800,000 DACA recipients stay,
sure,
that there's a proposal to take that 800,000 out of their legal allotment every year.
Well, that's interesting. I haven't heard of that, but I know that the lieutenant press secretary or the deputy press secretary did come out and say that if they continue this discussion of giving amnesty to illegal aliens, then we're not going to have a discussion and we'll continue to let the government shut down. So as of right now, and whilst I appreciate it, I want to move on here and take another call. But as of right now, the White House is making a firm stance of saying that's not the discussion we're going to have and that's not the direction we're going to go with this government shutdown. I have had some individuals asking about what is actually open and not open during this government shutdown. So according to NBC News, I wanted to get this out to you, and then we'll take some more calls here. FBI agents, Transportation Secretary Administration, Coast Guard are still all open on the job, meat and poultry inspectors, air traffic controllers, and members of Congress, obviously, because they're trying to negotiate and haggle on some of this. Most federal employees, which include staffs at the Department of Disease Control and Prevention, who are dealing with the flu epidemic, and staff at the Internal Revenue Services, they still need your money. They all constitute as the emergency personnel, emergency services, along with U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents are also on the job. Smithsonian institutions, museums, national zoos, veteran affairs, hospitals, federal courts, and U.S. Postal Service are all open. Wait a second. I thought museums and all the memorials and everything shut down. That's what Barack Obama made happen when they closed, right? I thought they all closed down during the government shutdown, so that way you were not be able to go out and do anything at all because of the government shutdown. Yeah, that's right. The Statue of Liberty, what is closed today? The Statue of Liberty National Museum, Ellis Island, briefly closed because of the shutdown. National Park Service said in a statement on Sunday that they would reopen after reaching a federal agreement in New York State. Governor Andrew Cuomo championed the move there. But elsewhere, employees were not so lucky. The Department of Health and Human Services said they'd close and furlough 50% of their staff. Furlough, not close, so they're still actually operating. The Department of Defense also issued guidance saying military and civilian personnel will continue normal duty but would not be paid, so they're being furloughed. They will still get paid, just not right on track. Department of Education also said in a memo more than 90% of its total staff would be sent home, but federal financial aid workers were still open to report. So they'll still take your money if you want to sign up for a student loan and get farther into debt, but the rest of the Department of Education is shut down as of right now. A non-emergency personnel and service that we don't need in the first place, but it's there, so what the heck. So that's what's open and not open. Non-emergency personnel and services are closed. Many of them furloughed, many of them still open. Really doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. The military's still going to get paid. KDOT and some of the highway departments are still going to get paid. It just may take another day or two once they reopen. It's not that big of a deal. How has it affected you? I want to hear. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? 721-8255-721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Richard.
Richard, what's going on, sir?
Well, it's just affected me immensely. Still got to go to work and put my time in.
You still got to go. See, that's the thing. You have to go to work, and you have to make money so you can pay your income taxes and pay all the goodie taxes, so that way you can pay them for when they open up and still be inefficient.
There's two things they need to do to this, and I'd be okay with it for as long as they wanted. Number one, Senate and Congress. Nobody else gets paid. They don't get paid either. They can feel the pain everybody else does. But the workers that are furloughed, when they come back, they have a choice. If you don't show up for work, when you come back, you can use your vacation if you've got some, or you don't get paid. I don't agree for paying people and then send them home, even though it's not their fault. That's just part of it. To not
do anything. Well,
working for the government.
Well, that's a great point, Richard. I appreciate that. I do have to say, I know that not all of them have done it. More may have done so than I was aware of. But according to some of the posts that I've seen on social media over the weekend, Congressman Ron Estes, Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins, and Congressman Kevin Yoder all sent their letters in saying that as long as the government shuts down, we're not going to accept a payment or accept a salary. So I had a comment from somebody saying, it's not that big of a thing. Do you really think that's going to matter? No, but it's still the sentiment and it's still the small thing. So I appreciate them reaching out and saying, you know what? We're not going to get paid. We don't want to get paid because obviously we can't do our job in order for everybody else to get paid. So we're not going to get paid either. So they did send in their letters. More may have done so. I have not seen that, but at least 3 of our congressmen and women out of the state have done so as of right now that I know of. Let's go back to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Pam.
Good morning, Pam. How are you today?
Oh, pretty good.
Good.
But I just have one comment, but I've been listening to everybody else. I used to work for Social Security as long as I could take it. And when we were during the shutdown during Clinton, they come up to us in the office and told us, we're calling this a furlough, but all you got to do is go home. You're not charged any vacation. You're not charged any sick leave. Paycheck will be there on time. Just enjoy yourself.
So you get a paid vacation when the government shuts down.
Exactly. And they make it sound like Armageddon, but it is not. To the workers, it is not. It's just a free vacation.
It's a free vacation. And the ones that do have to work, they'll still get paid on time. They're just not going to actually have it count for the day of because they're still working when the government, quote-unquote, shut down. It affects nobody. It does nothing. It is the scare tactics. And the fact that we try and play this bickering game of whose fault it is the government shutdown, I don't really care. It is the Democrats, but who really cares because the government can and should probably be shut down a little bit more frequently, don't you think?
It would work for me. But my question, Andy, is we were watching basketball over the weekend, and I'm watching that crazy bottom line there on ESPN, and they were actually saying NCAA basketball games were postponed due to government shutdown. And I told my husband, I said, now, if it affects NCAA basketball, we should be very concerned that the government has a hand in that. I thought, I'm calling Andy Monday and see if you would have any clue why a government shutdown ought to postpone a college
basketball game. That is very interesting. I had not heard that. During the break, I'll do a little research and see why they had shut that down. Maybe it was in parts of the country where it was a lot of government employees and they just shut it down, or maybe it was a government venue to where they couldn't actually open the venue, and that was part of the you're not going to enjoy your nice. I don't know why you would shut down a college basketball game. I mean, it's state universities, and maybe the state university didn't want to spend money when it wasn't getting a federal grant for a day. Which
but see, that wouldn't be NCAA.
It wouldn't technically be from the NCAA organization, but it would maybe be from the state university that it's hosting the event, and them saying, you know what, but still, they have their grant money for the year, so that doesn't make any sense. They're like, we're going to be shut down for a whole week from government grant money coming in. We're not going to play a basketball game. If they are doing that, then that's just the political BS they're trying to use to show how terrible a Republican shutdown is, that you can't enjoy your college basketball.
That was my first thought.
That's interesting. I am not aware of that one. Pam, I appreciate that very much. I got a caller on the line. We'll take you as soon as we come back from the break. I'm going to do a little research on that one. The college basketball games getting shut down and canceled because of a government shutdown. The travesties that accrued from there. Yeah, that's a scary ordeal right there. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. The basketball game that was canceled, actually, I guess there was only one with the Air Force Academy, which I guess would make sense with the military. Some of it being furloughed and put on hold. The Air Force Academy basketball game was the only one that I can see that was actually canceled due to the government shutdown. So that answers that question, which I guess makes sense. Air Force Academy, not necessarily the state universities or the other universities, just the Air Force Academy. So there you have it. That will, I guess that one makes sense. 316-721-8255. But other than that, no other college games have been affected. You going to work, still making a paycheck and making a living and contributing your tax money to the government. The IRS is still working, by the way, because when they say non-emergency services, apparently the IRS is an emergency service. They really need them to be at work, because how else are they able to collect the taxes for you to pay for everybody that's on a paid vacation today? That's really what it is. As Pam just mentioned, the individuals that get furloughed, that get the day off, the Department of Education, 90% of the Department of Education being furloughed or at least shut down today, other than the financial aid. You want to apply for a student loan and get into debt? Sure, we're still here to help you out. Other than that, we'll go home and take a vacation day. That's cool. Don't worry about us. We're good. That's the way the government shutdown works. Still spending money without actually being there, being even more inefficient. Never mind. I guess it's about the same when they actually show up to their job. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason. Have a great day, everybody.